Y/N and Taehyung are strolling through a beautiful park, the sun shining warmly on them. Y/N, visibly pregnant, seems a bit tired but is determined to enjoy the day. Taehyung, ever the doting husband. Read more. Taehyung, gently, you sure you're okay? We can always head back home. Y/N waves him off, smiling brightly. Y/N, playfully, stop worrying so much. They continue walking, but Y/N starts to feel a bit dizzy. She hides it, not wanting to ruin their day. They stop at a small cafe, where Y/N insists on having ice cream, despite the fact that she hasn't had a proper meal yet. Taehyung, concerned, you should eat something more substantial first, love. You need to take care of yourself. Ice cream is a food group, right? Taehyung gives her a small smile, but his worry deepens as he notices her looking more tired by the minute. Camera zoom out. It's late at night, and Taehyung is fast asleep. Y/N suddenly gets a craving for spicy noodles. Instead of waking Taehyung, she sneaks down to the kitchen. She starts cooking, but halfway through, she feels a sharp pain in her lower back. She finishes cooking and sits down to eat, but the pain doesn't go away. In fact, it gets worse. She grips the edge of the table, her breath coming in short gasps. Y/N, whispering to herself, she continues eating, but the pain finally forces her to stop. She pushes the bowl away, her appetite gone. She shakily gets up to head back to bed, hoping the pain will subside by morning. Cameras. The next day, Y/N insists on going grocery shopping by herself. Taehyung has a busy day at work, and she doesn't want to bother him. She carries heavy bags from the store to the car, her back protesting with every step. She knows she should have waited for Taehyung to help, but she's determined to do it on. As she reaches the car, she feels a sudden wave of nausea. She leans against the car for support, closing her eyes and taking deep breaths. A passerby notices and asks if she's okay, but Y/N forces a smile. As she reaches the car, she feels a sudden wave of nausea. She leans against the car for support, closing her eyes and taking deep breaths. A passerby notices and asks if she's okay, but Y/N forces, I'm okay, really. Thank you. She drives home, barely making it through the front door before collapsing on the couch, completely exhausted. Taehyung comes home to find Y/N fast asleep on the couch, the grocery bags still unpacked. He sighs, frustration and worry clear on his face. He gently wakes her, his voice laced with concern. Taehyung, softly, Y/N, wake up. Why didn't you wait for me? Y/N stirs, blinking up at him sleepily. She sits up. Y/N, mumbling, I didn't want to bother you. You were busy. Taehyung's expression hardens slightly, his worry turning into anger. Taehyung, firmly, you need to stop pushing yourself like this. It's not just about you anymore, there's our baby to think about. Y/N looks down, guilt washing. Y/N, quietly, I'm sorry. I just didn't want to be a burden. Taehyung shakes his head, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Taehyung, sternly, you're never a burden, Y/N. But you have to take care of yourself. I can't keep worrying about what might happen if you don't. He walks away, leaving Y/N sitting there, tears brimming in her eyes. She knows he's right, but the weight of his words and his silence feels. Y/N decides to tend to the garden, something she loves doing but hasn't had the energy for lately. She kneels down to pull weeds, ignoring the strain it's putting on her back. She's determined to prove to herself that she can still do things on her own. Hours pass, and the sun is starting to set. Taehyung comes outside to find Y/N struggling to stand. Taehyung, alarmed, what are you doing out here? You need to be resting. Y/N finally manages to stand, but she's swaying on her feet. Y/N, defensively, I'm fine, Tae. I just wanted to. Before she can finish her sentence, she collapses, Taehyung barely catching her in time. He lifts her. Taehyung, frustrated, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You're not taking care of yourself, Y/N. He carries her inside, placing her gently on the bed. His hands are shaking as he checks her pulse, his heart pounding with fear. Y/N wakes up later that night to find Taehyung sitting beside her, his face etched with worry. He's silent, his eyes avoiding hers. The tension in the room is palpable, and Y/N feels Y/N, softly, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Taehyung, coldly, you're putting yourself and our baby at risk, Y/N. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep watching you hurt. His words cut deep, and Y/N feels tears slipping down her cheeks. She reaches out to touch his hand, but he pulls away, standing up and walking towards the door. Y/N, pleading, please don't shut me out. I promise I'll be more careful. Taehyung pauses at the door, his back to her. He takes a deep breath, trying to compose himself. Taehyung, quietly, I need some time, Y/N. I need to think. He leaves the room, the door closing softly behind him, leaving He's silent, his usual warm demeanor replaced by a cold, distant one. Y/N feels a pang of guilt as she sees the worry etched on his face. Taehyung leaves the room without a word, returning a few minutes later with a glass of water and some painkillers. Taehyung, quietly, take these. You need to rest. Y/N takes the pills, feeling the tension between them growing. She reaches out to touch his hand, but he pulls away, standing up and walking towards the door. Taehyung pauses at the door, his back to her. For a moment, it looks like he might say something, but then he simply nods and leaves the room, the door clicking shut behind him. Y/N feels tears prickling at her eyes, the weight of his silence pressing down on her. She lies back on the sofa, exhaustion and sadness overwhelming her. Later that evening, Y/N finds herself in the kitchen, trying to prepare dinner despite feeling utterly drained. She's determined to make things right with Taehyung, to show him that she's okay, and that he doesn't need to worry so much. But as she chops vegetables, her vision blurs, and a wave of dizziness hits her hard. She grips the counter, trying to steady herself, but the room spins around her. Y/N, mutter. She takes a deep breath, willing herself to stay upright, but it's no use. Her knees buckle, and she collapses to the floor, the knife clattering to the ground beside her. Taehyung, who had been brooding in the living room, hears the crash from the kitchen. His heart stops, and in an instant, he's up and running towards the sound, fear gripping him tightly. Taehyung, panicked, Y/N. He finds her unconscious on the kitchen floor, and his world comes crashing down. He quickly scoops her into his arms, checking her pulse and breathing, his hands trembling with fear. Without wasting a second, he carries her to their bedroom, his Y/N slowly comes to, her eyes fluttering open. Taehyung is sitting beside her, his face pale with worry. He's holding her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a soothing rhythm. Taehyung, voice breaking, why didn't you tell me you weren't feeling well? Y/N tries to sit up, but Taehyung gently pushes her back down, his touch tender but firm. Y/N, weakly, I didn't want to worry you. I thought it was. Taehyung closes his eyes, taking a deep, shaky breath. The anger and fear that had been swirling inside him dissipate, leaving only love and guilt in their wake. Taehyung, softly, you are everything to me, Y/N. I can't lose you or our baby. Y/N reaches up to touch his face, her fingers trembling slightly. Y/N, softly, I know. I'm sorry too. I was careless. Taehyung leans into her touch, his eyes brimming with unshed Taehyung, whispering, you and our baby are my world, Y/N. I'll protect you both with everything I have. Please, promise me you'll take care of yourself, for us. Y/N nods, tears slipping down her cheeks as she feels the depth of his love and fear. Taehyung, softly, I love you more than you'll ever know. He holds her close, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead, vowing never to let anything come between them again. Camera zoom out. Camera zoom in, INT. Bedroom, next morning, the morning sun filters through the curtains as Y/N slowly wakes up. Taehyung is still beside her, watching over her like a guardian. He hasn't slept, too worried about her to close. Y/N, smiling softly, you stayed with me all night. Taehyung, nodding of course. I wasn't going to leave your side. Y/N smiles, feeling a deep sense of comfort and love. Taehyung gently places his hand on her belly, feeling the faint movements of their baby. His eyes soft. Taehyung, softly, we're in this together, Y/N. No more secrets, no more pushing yourself too hard. I need you to be safe, for both of us. Y/N, nodding, I promise, Tae. I'll take care of myself. I need you too. Taehyung leans in, kissing her gently on the lips, sealing their promise to each other. The silence that once filled the room is now replaced with a deep understanding and an unbreakable bond. Camera zoom out.